Gary, thanks for joining me again. As our listeners would know, Sacgasco drilled the nearby Dempsey well in 2017 and 2018, and that well has flowed commercial quantities of gas. Just to update us, Gary, what's the current status of Dempsey? And what have you taken from that drill program that has helped you zero in on Borba being the better target?
Thanks, Alex, and thanks for the opportunity. Sacgasco's Dempsey well was the first well in over 100 years of exploration and production in the Sacramento Basin to flow gas to sales from older sediments. The Dempsey well had over 5,000 feet of gas-saturated sediments, but the older reservoirs were relatively tight and flowed at relatively low rates. So we needed to find better reservoir sweet spots. The Dempsey well allowed us to correlate the modern 3D seismic to the modern well logs for the first time in the northeastern part of the Sacramento Basin. And that correlation led us to a revised reservoir deposition model that showed that Borba was a focus area for potential better reservoirs. The relative seismic amplitude and other attributes responses at Borba gave us greater confidence that Borba was the place to drill to find the missing gas reservoir element.
Okay, Gary, so you are on record saying that you've never seen seismic as good as what you're seeing in this particular well. I think the terminology you used was Dempsey on steroids. Could you tell us what makes you think that? And would a successful result at Borba suggest that your area of interest could be a lookalike to some of the bigger TCF fields surrounding Borba?
The seismic quality is very good, and having 3D seismic, modern vintage, places in a great position to be able to compare Dempsey and Borba. At Dempsey, we found many of the higher amplitudes or bright reflectors on the seismic correlated with gas-filled sediments. A direct comparison of the 3D seismic amplitudes at Borba and Dempsey showed that Borba seismic was much more anomalous, with numerous vertically stacked high-amplitude reflectors. So based on the revised reservoir model that I talked to just earlier, Borba is at a position in which many sediment sources were focused at the time they were being deposited, and that enhances the probability of better reservoirs. Of particular interest to us is the prolific West African-like channel patterns that we mapped from the 3D seismic. We see these as having significantly higher probability of good reservoirs, which is the only remaining element to be proven to underpin large gas accumulations in this area. Success at Borba will be like a proof of concept that leads us to the many Sacgasco mapped follow-up locations. We continue to interpret that the under-drilled older portions of the basin hold TCF-sized opportunities.
And finally, Gary, as you'd be aware, local investors have become fairly enamoured with some of the ASX-listed gas players that are drilling big targets in the Perth Basin, namely Strike Energy and Warrego Energy. Are there any similarities between these gas fields, and are there any characteristics of Sacramento that perhaps make it a superior basin to the Perth Basin?
Yes, it's been fascinating to watch the response. There are a number of similarities. Both prospective areas have gas reservoir targets at intervals that are under the bulk of the known historical production. Both areas have high pressures, which when combined with reasonable reservoirs will result in high gas flow rates. Both are onshore and reasonable distances from industry support centres. And both areas use amplitudes on 3D seismic to indicate gas-filled reservoirs. But our Borba prospect is much shallower, with a total well depth of less than 3,000 metres compared to over 5,000 metres in the Perth Basin. So our drilling and completion and production costs will be significantly less at Borba. Gas infrastructure is more extensive and easier to access for both term gas contracts and flexible spot gas sales contracts, and consequently initial sales of gas will likely occur sooner than they will in the Perth Basin. In addition, landowners at Borba get a significant share of the revenues from gas flows, and hence are very supportive of the exploration and production activities. And finally, the gas market in California is 7 times the size of the gas market in West Australia. Less than 10% of this is supplied from California. Hence, it will always be easier to market any and all gas discovered at and around Borba. So consequently, we're very excited to be drilling at Borba soon.
Interesting, Gary. Well, look, thanks very much for joining me, and we look forward to having a further update once the drill bit turns. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex.